One thing you're going to see a lot in JavaScript are loops. There are two types of loops. There's a while loop and there's a for loop. So let's go ahead and look at the while loop first. So the while loop is written just with while, and you write a conditional here, just like our if statement. And then you have your what happens if the conditional is true in here. So while the conditional equals true, do this thing. That's basically what a while loop is. So let's go ahead and mess around with this a little bit. Let's say that we have a variable with username, and it's going to equal prompt, what's your name? And then we'll say, while username does not equal, make sure you put it in quotes, Matt, username equals prompt, what's your name? All right, so we'll save this. So basically we created a variable that prompts the user with a question of what's your name when the page loads. If they answer with anything other than Matt, they're prompted again with what's your name. So if we come here, we refresh the page, we'll just write like, let's try Matt first, disappears. Let's try Greg, keeps coming up. Alex keeps coming up. Pete keeps coming up. Sam, Chris keeps coming up until I type Matt, then it goes away. So that's how a while loop works. Let's take a look at a for loop. Now with the for loop, you actually tell it three different things before you even do anything, so you don't just have one conditional. While the while loop has one conditional where when it's true, you keep looping through, the for loop has three different values that you give it. So the first one is I equals 0. This makes sense also as var I equals 0 for now. We're going to keep it like this. You could do I equals 0, but I want you all to be aware that I is a separate variable here, a variable that is only applicable within this for loop. So I equals 0, and we'll do I is less than 20. Then we'll do I plus plus. Now I plus plus is shorthand for something. I plus plus is shorthand for I equals I plus 1. All right, we're going to come back to that in a second. Then this is where this thing happens. So do this thing, right? That's where this happens. Same thing with the while loop. So these three different values, let's go over them really quickly. The first one gives I a value. Now you can do 0, you can do 100, you can do 1,000,000, you can do whatever you want. We're just going to do 0 for now. It's a really common way of doing it, primarily because you loop through arrays, and arrays start with a value of 0, right? Their index always starts with a value of 0. The next one says whether or not to loop. So this one says if I is less than 20, do this thing. All right? So that's the order it goes in. The first one is I equals 0. And then it says, okay, is 0 less than 20? Yes, it is. So let's do this thing. After it does it, it then iterates through and gives an additional value to I, or changes I's value. In this case, it adds 1 to I. I equals 0 plus 1. All right, which means now I is no longer 0. I is now 1 the next time around. So it keeps looping through. And in this case, it'll loop through until it hits 19. So let's go ahead and just check this out. Let's do document.write I. And we'll save it. Come back here, refresh, and we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 19. Right? 0 to 19. So that's how it loops through. Now, let's say that we want to do 1 through 20. Well, there's two really easy fixes we can do for this. We can change I to equal 1. So we'll save that. Go back, refresh the page, and now it starts at 1 instead of 0. And then we can do less than or equal to 20. All right, refresh the page, and now it equals 20. So loops as a means of programming are actually pretty straightforward. The issue is how do you actually loop through different values to make things happen? And we'll be doing that as we continue on with this course, especially next week and the following weeks. We're going to be testing out looping through arrays and an array of objects and all this different stuff, just to see how loops, for loops, and while loops are used in programming.